The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum.
Now, if you will open your book, we will begin to read the story.
Dorothy lived in the midst of the great Kansas prairies with Uncle Henry and Aunt Em. Their house was small. There was no garret at all and no cellar, except a small hole dug in the ground called a cyclone cellar, where the family could go in case one of those great whirlwinds arose, mighty enough to crush any building in its path. It was reached by a trap door in the middle of the floor, from which a ladder led down into the small, dark hole. When Dorothy stood in the doorway and looked around, she could see nothing but the great gray prairie on every side. When Aunt Em came there to live, she was a young, pretty wife. The sun and wind had changed her, too. She was thin and gaunt and never smiled now.
Uncle Henry worked hard from morning till night. It was Toto that made Dorothy laugh and saved her from growing as gray as her other surroundings. Toto was a little black dog with long silky hair and small black eyes that twinkled merrily on either side of his funny wee nose. Toto played all day long, and Dorothy played with him and loved him dearly. Today, however, they were not playing. Uncle Henry sat upon the doorstep and looked anxiously at the sky, which was even grayer than usual. "There's a cyclone coming, Em," he called to his wife.
Aunt Em dropped her work and came to the door. "Quick, Dorothy!" she screamed. "Run for the cellar!" Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed, and the girl started to get him. Aunt Em climbed down the ladder into the small, dark hole. Dorothy caught Toto at last and started to follow her aunt, when suddenly a strange thing happened. The house whirled around 2 or 3 times and rose slowly through the air. Dorothy felt as if she were going up in a balloon. Toto did not like it. He ran about the room barking loudly. But Dorothy sat quite still on the floor and waited to see what would happen. Once Toto got too near the open trap door and fell in, and at first the little girl thought she had lost him. She crept to the hole, caught Toto by the ear, and dragged him into the room again, afterward closing the trap door so that no more accidents could happen. Hour after hour passed away, and slowly Dorothy got over her fright. As the hours passed and nothing terrible happened, she crawled over the swaying floor to her bed and lay down upon it, and Toto followed and lay down beside her. In spite of the swaying of the house and the wailing of the wind, Dorothy soon closed her eyes and fell fast asleep. She was awakened by a shock so sudden and severe that if Dorothy had not been lying on the soft bed, she might have been hurt. Dorothy sat up and noticed that the house was not moving. She sprang from her bed and, with Toto at her heels, ran and opened the door. The cyclone had set the house down, very gently for a cyclone, in the midst of a country of marvelous beauty. There were lovely patches of green sward all about, with stately trees bearing rich and luscious fruits. While she stood looking eagerly at the strange and beautiful sights, she noticed coming toward her a group of the queerest people she had ever seen. They were not as big as the grown folks she had always been used to, but neither were they very small.
"You are welcome, most noble sorceress. We are so grateful to you for having killed the wicked witch of the East and for setting our people free from bondage. See, there are her 2 toes still sticking out from under a block of wood."
There indeed, just under the corner of the great beam the house rested on, 2 feet were sticking out, shod in silver shoes with pointed toes.
"Oh, dear! Oh, dear!" cried Dorothy, clasping her hands together in dismay. "The house must have fallen on her. Whatever shall we do?"
"There is nothing to be done. She was the Wicked Witch of the East. She has held all the Munchkins in bondage for many years, making them slave for her night and day. Now they are all set free and are grateful to you for the favor."
"Who are the Munchkins?" inquired Dorothy.
"They are the people who live in this land of the East, where the Wicked Witch ruled."
Dorothy was going to ask another question, but just then the Munchkins, who had been standing silently by, gave a loud shout and pointed to the corner of the house where the Wicked Witch had been lying. The feet of the dead witch had disappeared entirely, and nothing was left but the silver shoes.
She was so old that she dried up quickly in the sun. That is the end of her. But the silver shoes are yours, and you shall have them to wear.
She reached down and picked up the shoes, and after shaking the dust out of them, handed them to Dorothy. I am anxious to get back to my aunt and uncle, for I am sure they will worry about me. Can you help me find my way?
Then you must go to the City of Emeralds. Perhaps Oz will help you.
Where is this city? Asked Dorothy.
It is exactly in the center of the country and is ruled by Oz, the great wizard.
How can I get there? Asked Dorothy.
The road to the City of Emeralds is paved with yellow brick, so you cannot miss it. When you get to Oz, do not be afraid of him, but tell your story and ask him to help you. Goodbye, my dear.
Dorothy prepared for the journey to the City of Emeralds. She took a little basket and filled it with bread from the cupboard, laying a white cloth over the top. Then she looked down at her feet and noticed how old and worn her shoes were. At that moment, Dorothy saw lying on the table the silver shoes that had belonged to the Witch of the East. She took off her old leather shoes and tried on the silver ones, which fitted her as well as if they had been made for her. Finally, she picked up her basket. Come along, Toto, she said. We will go to the Emerald City and ask the great Oz how to get back to Kansas again. Within a short time, she was walking briskly toward the Emerald City, her silver shoes tinkling merrily on the hard, yellow roadbed. When she had gone several miles, she thought she would stop to rest, and so climbed to the top of the fence beside the road and sat down. There was a great cornfield beyond the fence, and not far away she saw a scarecrow placed high on a pole to keep the birds from the ripe corn. Dorothy leaned her chin upon her hand and gazed thoughtfully at the scarecrow. Its head was a small sack stuffed with straw, with eyes, nose, and mouth painted on it to represent a face. She was surprised to see one of the eyes slowly wink at her.
Good day, said the scarecrow in a rather husky voice.
Did you speak? Asked the girl in wonder.
I'm not feeling well, said the scarecrow with a smile. For it is very tedious being perched up here night and day to scare away crows.
Can't you get down? Asked Dorothy.
No, for this pole is stuck up my back. If you will please take away the pole, I shall be greatly obliged to you.
Dorothy reached up both arms and lifted the figure off the pole. For being stuffed with straw, it was quite light.
Thank you very much, said the scarecrow, when he had been set down on the ground. I feel like a new man. Who are you? Asked the scarecrow, when he had stretched himself and yawned. And where are you going?
My name is Dorothy, said the girl, and I am going to the Emerald City to ask the great Oz to send me back to Kansas.
Where is the Emerald City? He inquired. And who is Oz?
Why, don't you know? She returned in surprise.
No, indeed. I don't know anything. You see, I'm stuffed, so I have no brains at all, he answered sadly.
Oh, said Dorothy, I'm awfully sorry for you.
Do you think, he asked, if I go to the Emerald City with you, that the great Oz would give me some brains?
I cannot tell, she returned. But if you will come with me, I'll ask Oz to do all he can for you.
Thank you, he answered gratefully.
They walked back to the road. Dorothy helped him over the fence, and they started along the path of yellow brick for the Emerald City. At noon, they sat down beside the roadside, near a little brook, and Dorothy opened her basket and got out some bread. She offered a piece to the scarecrow, but he refused.
I am never hungry, he said. And it is a lucky thing I am not, for my mouth is only painted, and if I should cut a hole in it so I could eat, the straw I am stuffed with would come out, and that would spoil the shape of my head.
Dorothy saw at once that this was true, so she only nodded and went on eating her bread. Won't you tell me a story while we are resting? Asked the child.
The scarecrow looked at her reproachfully and answered, My life has been so short that I really know nothing whatever. I was only made day before yesterday. What happened in the world before that time is all unknown to me. By good luck, you came along and pulled me off the stake. And from what you say, I am sure the great Oz will give me brains as soon as we get to the Emerald City.
Oh, I hope so, said Dorothy earnestly, since you seem anxious to have them.
Oh, yes, I am anxious, returned the Scarecrow. It is such an uncomfortable feeling to know one is a fool.
When she had finished her meal and was about to go back to the road of yellow brick, she was startled to hear a deep groan nearby. What was that? She asked timidly.
I cannot imagine, replied the Scarecrow, but we can go and see.
They turned and walked through the forest a few steps when Dorothy discovered something shining in a ray of sunshine that fell between the trees. She ran to the place and then stopped short with a cry of surprise.
One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it with an uplifted axe in his hands was a man made entirely of tin. His head and arms and legs were jointed upon his body, but he stood perfectly motionless, as if he could not stir at all.
Did you groan? Asked Dorothy.
Yes, answered the Tin Man, I did.
What can I do for you? She inquired softly, for she was moved by the sad voice in which the man spoke.
Get an oil can and oil my joints, he answered. They are rusted so badly that I cannot move them at all. If I am well oiled, I shall soon be all right again. You will find an oil can on a shelf in my cottage.
Dorothy at once ran back to the cottage and found the oil can.
Oil my neck first. Now oil the joints in my arms, he said. The Tin Woodman gave a sigh of satisfaction and lowered his axe, which he leaned against the tree. This is a great comfort, he said. You have certainly saved my life. How did you happen to be here?
We are on our way to the Emerald City to see the Great Oz, she answered.
Why do you wish to see Oz? He asked.
I want him to send me back to Kansas, and the Scarecrow wants him to put a few brains into his head, she replied.
The Tin Woodman appeared to think deeply for a moment. Then he said, Do you suppose Oz could give me a heart?
Why, I guess so, Dorothy answered. It would be as easy as to give the Scarecrow brains.
True, the Tin Woodman returned. So, if you will allow me to join your party, I will also go to the Emerald City and ask Oz to help me. Oh, come along, said the Scarecrow heartily. And Dorothy added that she would be pleased to have his company. So the Tin Woodman shouldered his axe, and they all passed through the forest until they came to the road that was paved with yellow brick. The road was still paved with yellow brick, but these were much covered by dried branches and dead leaves from the trees, and the walking was not at all good.
How long will it be, the child asked of the Tin Woodman, before we are out of the forest?
I cannot tell, was the answer. Just as he spoke, there came from the forest a terrible roar, and the next moment a great lion bounded into the road. With one blow of his paw, he sent the Scarecrow spinning over and over to the edge of the road, and then he struck at the Tin Woodman with his sharp claws.
Little Toto ran barking toward the lion, and the great beast had opened his mouth to bite the dog when Dorothy slapped the lion upon his nose as hard as she could while she cried out, Don't you dare to bite Toto! You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a big beast like you, to bite a poor little dog.
I didn't bite him, said the lion as he rubbed his nose with his paw where Dorothy had hit it.
No, but you tried to, she retorted. You are nothing but a big coward.
I know it, said the lion, hanging his head in shame. I've always known it.
What makes you a coward? Asked Dorothy, looking at the great beast in wonder, for he was as big as a small horse.
It's a mystery, replied the lion. I suppose I was born that way. But that isn't right. The king of beasts shouldn't be a coward, said the Scarecrow. I know it, returned the lion, wiping a tear from his eye with the tip of his tail. It is my great sorrow and makes my life very unhappy. But whenever there is danger, my heart begins to beat fast. Perhaps, said the lion thoughtfully, if I had no heart, I should not be a coward. Have you brains? Asked the Scarecrow. I suppose so. I never looked to see, replied the Lion. I'm going to the Great Oz to ask him to give me some, remarked the Scarecrow, for my head is stuffed with straw. And I am going to ask him to give me a heart, said the Woodman.
And I am going to ask him to send Toto and me back to Kansas, added Dorothy.
Do you think Oz could give me courage? Asked the Cowardly Lion. Just as easily as he could give me brains, said the Scarecrow. Or give me a heart, said the Tin Woodman.
Or send me back to Kansas, said Dorothy.
Then if you don't mind, I'll go with you, said the Lion, for my life is simply unbearable without a bit of courage. So once more the little company set off upon the journey, the Lion walking with stately strides at Dorothy's side. They soon heard strange noises in the depths of the forest, and the Lion whispered to them that it was in this part of the country that the Kalidas lived.
What are the Kalidas? Asked the girl.
They are monstrous beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers, replied the Lion. I'm terribly afraid of the Kalidas.
I'm not surprised that you are, returned Dorothy. They must be dreadful beasts.
The Lion was about to reply when suddenly they came to a gulf across the road. So they sat down to consider what they should do, and after serious thought, the Scarecrow said, Here is a great tree standing close to the ditch. If the Tin Woodman can chop it down so that it will fall to the other side, we can walk across it easily. The Woodman set to work at once, and the tree was soon chopped nearly through. Then the Lion put his strong front legs against the tree and pushed with all his might, and slowly the big tree tipped and fell with a crash across the ditch, with its top branches on the other side. They are the Kalidas, said the Cowardly Lion, beginning to tremble. Quick, cried the Scarecrow, let us cross over. So Dorothy went first, holding Toto in her arms. The Tin Woodman followed, and the Scarecrow came next. The Lion, although he was certainly afraid, turned to face the Kalidas, and then he gave so loud and terrible a roar that even the fierce beasts stopped short and looked at him in surprise. But seeing they were bigger than the Lion, and remembering that there were two of them and only one of him, the Kalidas again rushed forward and began to cross the tree. And the Lion said to Dorothy, We are lost, for they will surely tear us to pieces with their sharp claws. Wait a minute, called the Scarecrow. He had been thinking what was best to be done, and now he asked the Woodman to chop away the end of the tree that rested on their side of the ditch. The Tin Woodman began to use his axe at once, and just as the two Kalidas were nearly across, the tree fell with a crash into the gulf, carrying the ugly, snarling brutes with it, and both were dashed to pieces on the sharp rocks at the bottom. Well, said the Cowardly Lion, drawing a long breath of relief, I see we are going to live a little while longer, and I am glad of it, for it must be a very uncomfortable thing not to be alive. Those creatures frightened me so badly that my heart is beating yet. Ah, said the Tin Woodman sadly, I wish I had a heart to beat.
This adventure made the travelers more anxious than ever to get out of the forest, and they walked so fast that Dorothy became tired and had to ride on the Lion's back. Behind them was the dark forest they had passed safely through, although the broad river now cut them off from the Emerald City. But after the Tin Woodman had cut a few logs and fastened them together with wooden pins, they were ready to start. Dorothy sat down in the middle of the raft and held Toto in her arms. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman stood upon the other end to steady it, and they had long poles in their hands to push the raft through the water. They got along quite well at first, but when they reached the middle of the river, the water grew so deep that the long poles would not touch the bottom.
This is bad, said the Tin Woodman. We must certainly get to the Emerald City if we can, the Scarecrow continued, and he pushed so hard on his long pole that it stuck fast in the mud at the bottom of the river, and before he could pull it out again or let go, the raft was swept away and the poor Scarecrow left clinging to the pole in the middle of the river.
What can we do to save him? asked Dorothy.
The lion and the woodman both shook their heads, for they did not know. So they sat down upon the bank and gazed wistfully at the scarecrow until a stork flew by, which, seeing them, stopped to rest at the water's edge.
Who are you, and where are you going?
Asked the stork. I am Dorothy, answered the girl, and these are my friends, the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion, and we are going to the Emerald City.
This isn't the road,
said the stork as she twisted her long neck and looked sharply at the queer party. I know it, returned Dorothy, but we have lost the scarecrow and are wondering how we shall get him again.
Where is he?
Asked the stork. Over there in the river, answered the girl.
If he wasn't so big and heavy, I would get him for you,
remarked the stork. He isn't heavy a bit, said Dorothy eagerly, and if you will bring him back to us, we shall thank you ever and ever so much. So the big bird flew into the air and over the water till she came to where the scarecrow was perched upon his pole. Then the stork, with her great claws, grabbed the scarecrow by the arm and carried him up into the air and back to the bank where Dorothy and the lion and the Tin Woodman and Toto were sitting.
We cannot be far from the road of yellow brick now, remarked the scarecrow as he stood beside the girl, for we have come nearly as far as the river carried us away. The Tin Woodman was about to reply when he heard a low growl, and turning his head, he saw a strange beast come bounding over the grass towards them. It was indeed a great yellow wildcat, and the woodman saw that running before the beast was a little gray field mouse, and although he had no heart, he knew it was wrong for the wildcat to try to kill such a pretty, harmless creature. So the woodman raised his axe, and as the wildcat ran by, he gave it a quick blow, and the field mouse, now that it was freed from its enemy, stopped short, and coming slowly up to the woodman, it said in a squeaky little voice,
Oh, thank you! Thank you ever so much for saving my life!
Don't speak of it, I beg of you, replied the woodman. I have no heart, you know, so I am careful to help all those who may need a friend, even if it happens to be only a mouse.
Only a mouse?
Cried the little animal indignantly.
Why, I am a queen, the queen of all the field mice.
Oh, indeed, said the woodman, making a bow. Permit me to introduce to you Her Majesty the Queen.
Dorothy nodded gravely, and the queen made a courtesy, after which she became quite friendly with the little girl.
If ever you need us,
she said,
come out into the field and call, and we shall hear you and come to your assistance. Goodbye.
Goodbye, they all answered, and away the queen ran while Dorothy held Toto tightly, lest he should run after her and frighten her.
It was not long before they reached the road of yellow brick and turned again toward the Emerald City where the great Oz dwelt. The road was smooth and well paved now, and the country about was beautiful. They could see fences built beside the road, but these were painted green, and when they came to a small house in which a farmer evidently lived, that also was painted green.
This must be the land of Oz, said Dorothy, and we are surely getting near the Emerald City. I should like something to eat, said the girl, and I'm sure Toto is nearly starved. Let us stop at the next house and talk to the people. So when they came to a good-sized farmhouse, Dorothy walked boldly up to the door and knocked. A woman opened it just far enough to look out and said, What do you want, child? And why is that great lion with you? We wish to pass the night with you, if you will allow us, answered Dorothy, and the lion is my friend and comrade, and would not hurt you for the world. Well, said the woman, after thinking it over and taking another peep at the lion, if that is the case, you may come in, and I will give you some supper and a place to sleep.
So they gathered around the table, and Dorothy ate some delicious porridge, and a dish of scrambled eggs, and a plate of nice white bread, and enjoyed her meal. The lion ate some of the porridge, but did not care for it, saying it was made from oats, and oats were food for horses, not for lions. The scarecrow and the Tin Woodman ate nothing at all. Toto ate a little of everything, and was glad to get a good supper again.
The next morning, as soon as the sun was up, they started on their way and soon saw a beautiful green glow in the sky just before them. "That must be the Emerald City," said Dorothy. In front of them, and at the end of the road of yellow brick, was a big gate, all studded with emeralds that glittered so in the sun that even the painted eyes of the Scarecrow were dazzled by their brilliancy. There was a bell beside the gate, and Dorothy pushed the button and heard a silvery tinkle sound within. Then the big gate swung slowly open, and they all passed through and found themselves in a high-arched room, the walls of which glistened with countless emeralds.
Before them stood a little man about the same size as the Munchkins. When he saw Dorothy and her companions, the man asked, "What do you wish in the Emerald City?"
"We came here to see the Great Oz," said Dorothy.
"I am the guardian of the gates, and since you demand to see the Great Oz, I must take you to his palace. But first, you must put on the spectacles."
"Why?" asked Dorothy.
"Because if you did not wear spectacles, the brightness and glory of the Emerald City would blind you." Then the Green Man fitted spectacles for the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Lion, and even on little Toto. Then the guardian of the gates put on his own glasses and told them he was ready to show them to the palace. Taking a big golden key from a peg on the wall, he opened another gate, and they all followed him through the portal into the streets of the Emerald City.
Dorothy and her friends passed through the palace gates and were led into a big room with a green carpet and lovely green furniture set with emeralds. But what interested Dorothy most was the big throne of green marble that stood in the middle of the room. It was shaped like a chair, and in the center of the chair was an enormous head, without body to support it or any arms or legs whatever. Dorothy heard a voice say,
"I am Oz, the great and terrible. Who are you, and why do you seek me?"
I am Dorothy, the small and meek. I have come to you for help."
The eyes looked at her thoughtfully for a full minute. Then said the voice, "What do you wish me to do?"
"Send me back to Kansas, where my Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are," she answered earnestly.
"Well," said the head, "if you wish me to use my magic power to send you home again, you must do something for me first."
"What must I do?" asked the girl.
"Kill the Wicked Witch of the West," answered Oz.
"But I cannot," exclaimed Dorothy, greatly surprised.
"You kill the Witch of the East, and you wear the silver shoes, which bear a powerful charm."
The little girl began to weep. She was so much disappointed. "If you, who are great and terrible, cannot kill her yourself, how do you expect me to do it?"
"I do not know," said the head. "But until the Wicked Witch dies, you will not see your uncle and aunt again."
"What shall we do now?" asked Dorothy sadly.
"There's only one thing we can do," returned the Lion, "and that is to seek out the Wicked Witch and destroy her."
"I suppose we must try it, but I am sure I do not want to kill anybody, even to see Aunt Em again."
Therefore, it was decided to start upon their journey the next morning, and the woodman sharpened his axe on a green grindstone and had all his joints properly oiled. The Scarecrow stuffed himself with fresh straw, and Dorothy put new paint on his eyes, that he might see better. They went to bed quite early and slept soundly until daylight, when the soldier with the green whiskers led them through the streets of the Emerald City, and then he politely opened the gate for our friends.
"Which road leads to the Wicked Witch of the West?" asked Dorothy.
"There is no road. No one ever wishes to go that way."
"How then are we to find her?" inquired the girl.
"That will be easy," replied the man. "For when she knows you are in the country of the Winkies, she will find you and make you all her slaves." "Why, perhaps not," said the Scarecrow, "for we mean to destroy her." "Oh, that is different," said the guardian of the gates. "Keep to the west where the sun sets, and you cannot fail to find her." They thanked him and bade him goodbye, and turned toward the west, walking over fields of soft grass, dotted here and there with daisies and buttercups.
Now the Wicked Witch of the West had but one eye, yet that was as powerful as a telescope and could see everywhere. So as she sat in the door of her castle, she happened to look around and saw Dorothy lying asleep with her friends all about her. They were a long distance off, but the Wicked Witch was angry to find them in her country. There was in her cupboard a golden cap with a circle of diamonds and rubies running round it. This golden cap had a charm. Whoever owned it could call 3 times upon the winged monkeys who would obey any order they were given. So the Wicked Witch took the golden cap from her cupboard and placed it upon her head. Then she stood upon her left foot and said slowly,
Eppy, Peppy, Cocky.
There was a rushing of many wings, a great chattering and laughing, and the Wicked Witch was surrounded by a crowd of monkeys, each with a pair of immense and powerful wings on his shoulders. The witch said,
Go to the strangers who are within my land and destroy them all except the lion, said the Wicked Witch. Bring that beast to me, for I have a mind to harness him like a horse and make him work.
Your command shall be obeyed, said the leader, and the winged monkeys flew away to the place where Dorothy and her friends were walking. Some of the monkeys seized the Tin Woodman and carried him through the air until they were over a country thickly covered with sharp rocks. Here they dropped the poor woodman, who fell a great distance to the rocks, where he lay so battered and dented that he could neither move nor groan. Others of the monkeys caught the Scarecrow, and with their long fingers pulled all the straw out of his clothes and head. The remaining monkeys threw pieces of stout rope around the lion and wound many coils about his body and head and legs until he was unable to bite or scratch or struggle in any way. Then they lifted him up and flew away with him to the witch's castle, where he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence around it, so that he could not escape. But Dorothy they did not harm at all. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, stopped short, motioning the others not to touch her. We dare not harm this little girl, he said to them, for she is protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is to carry her to the castle of the Wicked Witch and leave her there. So carefully and gently they lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her swiftly through the air until they came to the castle, where they set her down upon the front doorstep.
Then all the winged monkeys flew into the air and were soon out of sight. The Wicked Witch was both surprised and worried when she looked down at Dorothy's feet, and seeing the silver shoes, began to tremble with fear, for she knew what a powerful charm belonged to them. But she happened to look into the child's eyes and saw that the little girl did not know of the wonderful power the silver shoes gave her. So the Wicked Witch said to Dorothy, harshly and severely,
Come with me, and see that you mind everything I tell you. For if you do not, I will make an end of you, as I did of the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow.
The witch bade her clean the pots and kettles and sweep the floor and keep the fire fed with wood. This made Dorothy so very angry that she picked up the bucket of water that stood near and dashed it over the witch, wetting her from head to foot. Instantly, the wicked woman gave a loud cry of fear, and then, as Dorothy looked at her in wonder, the witch began to shrink and fall away.
See what you have done, she screamed. In a minute I shall melt away.
With these words, the witch fell down in a brown, melted, shapeless mass and began to spread over the clean boards of the kitchen floor. Seeing that she had really melted away to nothing, Dorothy drew another bucket of water and threw it over the mess. Then, being at last free to do as she chose, she ran out to the courtyard to tell the lion that the Wicked Witch of the West had come to an end and that they were no longer prisoners in a strange land.
The Cowardly Lion was much pleased to hear that the Wicked Witch had been melted by a bucket of water, and Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. They went in together to the castle, where Dorothy's first act was to call all the Winkies together and tell them that they were no longer slaves. There was great rejoicing among the yellow Winkies. "If our friends the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman were only with us," said the Lion, "I should be quite happy."
"Don't you suppose we could rescue them?" asked the girl anxiously.
"We can try," answered the Lion. So they called the yellow Winkies and asked them if they would help to rescue their friends. And the Winkies said that they would be delighted to do all in their power for Dorothy, who had set them free from bondage. So they traveled to the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent.
The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms and carried him back to the yellow castle again. And when the tinsmiths came, bringing with them all their tools and baskets, Dorothy asked, "Can you straighten out those dents in the Tin Woodman and bend him back into shape again and solder him together where he is broken?"
The tinsmiths looked the Woodman over carefully and then answered that they thought they could mend him so he would be as good as ever. So they set to work in one of the big yellow rooms of the castle and worked for 3 days and 4 nights, hammering and twisting and bending and soldering and polishing and pounding at the legs and body and head of the Tin Woodman, until at last he was straightened out into his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. "If we only had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Woodman, when Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened, "I should be quite happy."
"We must try to find him," said the girl. So she called the Winkies to help her, and they walked until they came to the tall tree, in the branches of which the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes.
It was a very tall tree, and the trunk was so smooth that no one could climb it. But the Woodman said at once, "I'll chop it down, and then we can get the Scarecrow's clothes." As soon as he had spoken, the Tin Woodman began to chop, and in a short time the tree fell over with a crash, when the Scarecrow's clothes fell out of the branches and rolled off on the ground.
Dorothy picked them up and had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, where they were stuffed with nice, clean straw. And behold, here was the Scarecrow as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. Now they were reunited, Dorothy said, "We must go back to Oz and claim his promise. Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow." This they decided to do. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill her basket with food for the journey, and there she saw the golden cap. Dorothy looked inside the golden cap and saw some words written upon the lining. So she read the directions carefully and put the cap upon her head. "Eppy, Peppy, Khaki," she said, standing on her left foot. And they heard a great chattering and flapping of wings as the band of winged monkeys flew up to them. The king bowed low before Dorothy and asked,
"What is your command?"
"We wish to go to the Emerald City," said the child, "and we have lost our way."
"We will carry you," replied the king. And no sooner had he spoken than 2 of the monkeys caught Dorothy in their arms and flew away with her. Others took the Scarecrow and the Woodman and the Lion, and one little monkey seized Toto and flew after them, although the dog tried hard to bite him. So they rode through the air quite cheerfully and had a fine time looking at the pretty gardens and woods far below them.
Dorothy found herself riding easily between 2 of the biggest monkeys, one of them the king himself. They had made a chair of their hands and were careful not to hurt her. Dorothy looked down and saw the green, shining walls of the Emerald City before them. The strange creatures set the travelers down carefully before the gate of the city. The king bowed low to Dorothy and then flew swiftly away, followed by all his band. "That was a good ride," said the little girl.
"Yes, and a quick way out of our troubles," replied the Lion. The 4 travelers walked up to the great gate of the Emerald City and rang the bell. The soldier with the green whiskers was still on guard before the door, but he let them in at once. Presently, they heard a voice, seeming to come from somewhere near the top of the great dome, and it said solemnly, "I am Oz, the great and terrible. Why do you seek me?"
"We have come to claim our promise, O Oz."
"Is the wicked witch really destroyed?" asked the voice, and Dorothy thought it trembled a little.
"Yes," she answered. "I melted her with a bucket of water."
"Dear me," said the voice. How sudden. Well, come to me tomorrow, for I must have time to think it over. You've had plenty of time already, said the Tin Woodman angrily. "No, we shan't wait a day longer," said the Scarecrow.
You must keep your promises to us, exclaimed Dorothy.
The lion thought it might be as well to frighten the wizard, so he gave a large, loud roar, which was so fierce and dreadful that Toto jumped away from him in alarm and tipped over the screen that stood in a corner. As it fell with a crash, they saw, standing in just the spot the screen had hidden, a little old man with a bald head and a wrinkled face, who seemed to be as much surprised as they were. The Tin Woodman, raising his axe, rushed toward the little man and cried out, "Who are you?" "I am Oz, the great and terrible," said the little man in a trembling voice. "But don't strike me, please don't, and I'll do anything you want me to."
I thought Oz was a great head, said Dorothy.
"No, you are wrong," said the little man meekly. "I have been making believe."
Making believe, cried Dorothy. Are you not a great wizard?
"Not a bit of it, my dear. I'm just a common man." "Well, you're more than that," said the Scarecrow in a grieved tone. "You're a humbug." "Exactly so," declared the little man, rubbing his hands together as if it pleased him. "I am a humbug." "But this is terrible," said the Tin Woodman. "How shall I ever get my heart?" "Or I my courage?" asked the lion. "Or I my brains?" wailed the Scarecrow.
I think you are a very bad man, said Dorothy.
"Oh, no, my dear. I'm really a very good man. But I'm a very bad wizard, I must admit." "Can't you give me brains?" asked the Scarecrow. "Oh, yes. Sit down in that chair, please," replied Oz. So the wizard unfastened his head and emptied out the straw. Then he entered the back room and took up a measure of bran, which he mixed with a great many pins. He filled the top of the Scarecrow's head with the mixture. And when he had fastened the Scarecrow's head on his body again, he said to him, "Hereafter you will be a great man, for I have given you a lot of brand new brains." The Scarecrow was both pleased and proud at the fulfillment of his greatest wish, and having thanked Oz warmly, he went back to his friends.
Dorothy looked at him curiously. His head was quite bulging out at the top with brains. "How do you feel?" she asked.
"I feel wise indeed," he answered earnestly. "When I get used to my brains, I shall know everything." "I have come for my heart," said the woodman. "Very well," answered the little man. "But I shall have to cut a hole in your breast so I can put your heart in the right place. I hope it won't hurt you." "Oh, no," answered the woodman. "I shall not feel it at all." So Oz cut a small square hole in the left side of the Tin Woodman's breast. Then, going to a chest of drawers, he took out a pretty heart, made entirely of silk and stuffed with sawdust. He put the heart in the woodman's breast and then replaced the square of tin, soldering it neatly together where it had been cut. "There," said he. "Now you have a heart that any man might be proud of." "I have come from my courage," announced the lion. "Very well," answered the little man. "I will get it for you." He went to a cupboard and, reaching up to a high shelf, took down a square green bottle, the contents of which he poured into a green gold dish, beautifully carved. Placing this before the cowardly lion, who sniffed at it as if he did not like it, the wizard said, "Drink." The lion drank till the dish was empty. "How do you feel now?" asked Oz. "Full of courage," replied the lion.
Thus each of the little party was satisfied, except Dorothy, who longed more than ever to get back to Kansas.
"Sit down, my dear. I think I have found the way to get you out of this country," said Oz.
How? Asked Dorothy.
"A balloon," said Oz, "is made of silk, which is coated with glue to keep the gas in it. But in all this country there is no gas to fill the balloon with, to make it float."
If it won't float, remarked Dorothy, it will be of no use to us.
True, answered Oz. But there is another way to make it float, which is to fill it with hot air. Now, if you will help me sew the silk together, we will begin to work on our balloon.
It took 3 days to sew all the strips together, but when it was finished, they had a big bag of green silk more than 20 feet long.
Then Oz painted it on the inside with a coat of thin glue to make it airtight, after which he announced that the balloon was ready. But we must have a basket to ride in, he said. So he sent the soldier with the green whiskers for a big clothes basket, which he fastened with many ropes to the bottom of the balloon. When it was all ready, Oz ordered the balloon carried out in front of the palace, and the people gazed upon it with much curiosity. The Tin Woodman had chopped a big pile of wood, and now he made a fire of it. And Oz held the bottom of the balloon over the fire so that the hot air that arose from it would be caught in the silken bag. Gradually, the balloon swelled out and rose into the air until finally the basket just touched the ground. Then Oz got into the basket and said to all the people in a loud voice, "I am now going away to make a visit. While I am gone, the Scarecrow will rule over you. I command you to obey him as you would me." "Come, Dorothy," cried the wizard. "Hurry up, or the balloon will fly away."
She was within a few steps of it, and Oz was holding out his hands to help her into the basket when crack went the ropes, and the balloon rose into the air without her. "Come back!" she screamed. "I want to go too!"
"I can't come back, my dear," called Oz from the basket. "Goodbye!"
"Goodbye!" shouted everyone, and all eyes were turned upward to where the wizard was riding in the basket, rising every moment farther and farther into the sky. And that was the last any of them ever saw of Oz, the wonderful wizard. Dorothy wept bitterly at the passing of her hope to get home to Kansas again.
The Scarecrow was now the ruler of the Emerald City, and although he was not a wizard, the people were proud of him. The morning after the balloon had gone up with Oz, the 4 travelers met in the throne room and talked matters over. The Scarecrow sat in the big throne, and the others stood respectfully before him.
"Is there no one who can help me?" asked Dorothy earnestly.
"Let us call in the soldier with the green whiskers," he said, "and ask his advice." So the soldier was summoned and entered the throne room timidly. "Glinda might," he suggested. "Who is Glinda?" inquired the Scarecrow. "The Witch of the South. She is the most powerful of all the witches."
"Glinda is a good witch, isn't she?" asked the child.
"She is kind to everyone," said the soldier.
"How can I get to her castle?" asked Dorothy.
"The road is straight to the south," he answered, "but it is said to be full of dangers to travelers." The soldier then left them, and the Scarecrow said, "It seems, in spite of dangers, that the best thing Dorothy can do is to travel to the land of the south and ask Glinda to help her." "I shall go with Dorothy," declared the lion, "for Dorothy will need someone to protect her." "That is true," agreed the woodman. "My axe may be of service to her, so I also will go with her to the land of the south." "When shall we start?" asked the Scarecrow. "Are you going?" they asked in surprise. "Certainly. If it wasn't for Dorothy, I should never have had brains. We shall go tomorrow morning. So now let us all get ready, for it will be a long journey." Next morning, they all shook hands with the soldier with the green whiskers, who had walked with them as far as the gate. "You are now our ruler," he said to the Scarecrow, "so you must come back to us as soon as possible." "I certainly shall if I am able," the Scarecrow replied, "but I must help Dorothy to get home first." And they walked forth and started upon their journey.
The 4 travelers came to a very beautiful castle. Before the gates were 3 young girls, dressed in handsome red uniforms trimmed with gold braid. And as Dorothy approached, one of them said to her, "Why have you come to the South Country?" "To see the good witch who rules here," she answered. "Will you take me to her?" They followed the soldier girl into a big room where the witch Glinda sat upon a throne of rubies. She was both beautiful and young to their eyes. "What can I do for you, my child?" she asked. Dorothy told the witch all her story. "My greatest wish now," she added, "is to get back to Kansas." "Bless your dear heart," she said. "I am sure I can tell you of a way to get back to Kansas." Then she added, "But if I do, you must give me the golden cap." "But you have not yet told me how to get back to Kansas." "Your silver shoes will carry you over the desert," replied Glinda. "All you have to do is to knock the heels together 3 times and command the shoes to carry you wherever you wish to go." "If that is so," said the child joyfully, "I will ask them to carry me back to Kansas at once." Dorothy took Toto up solemnly in her arms, and having said goodbye, she clapped the heels of her shoes together 3 times, saying, "Take me home to Aunt Em." Instantly she was whirling through the air so swiftly that all she could see or feel was the wind whistling past her ears. At length, however, she sat up and looked about her. "Good gracious!" she cried.
For she was sitting on the broad Kansas prairie, and just before her was the new farmhouse Uncle Henry built after the cyclone had carried away the old one. Uncle Henry was milking the cows in the barnyard, and Toto had jumped out of her arms and was running toward the barn, barking joyously.
Dorothy stood up and found she was in her stocking feet, for the silver shoes had fallen off in her flight through the air and were lost forever in the desert. Aunt Em had just come out of the house to water the cabbages when she looked up and saw Dorothy running toward her. "My darling child," she cried, folding the little girl in her arms and covering her face with kisses. "Where in the world did you come from?" "From the land of Oz," said Dorothy gravely. "And here is Toto, too. And oh, Aunt Em, I'm so glad to be at home again."